This is the board meeting on KTRS.
910 Big 550 KTRS. Board meeting is in session. We've got our regulars here. John Diehl, House Majority Leader, soon to be Speaker of the House. He is in Jefferson City. He joins us via Skype. Good morning, John Diehl.
Hey, good morning, McGraw.
Also with us is attorney and former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden, Jane Dueker. Jane, good morning.
Good morning.
And, of course, we have the editorial page editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Tony Messenger. Good morning.
Good morning, McGraw. How you doing?
We're good. I should make just a special note that we have asked a number of elected officials, community leaders from the African-American community to join us. We were either rebuffed, were not responded to, or told politely and not so politely, no, we have no desire to come on your show. So that is not for lack of trying.
Is that because of you or us, Tony?
I don't.
It's got to be McGraw.
I don't.
Of course, admit it. Some of them are in jail, and some of them have been very busy and probably getting a little bit of rest right now. So,
yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, Tony Messenger, let's start with you. Overall, let's just get. This is obviously not a normal week, not a normal show, not a normal day. Let's just start off with you. You've written a couple of editorials. Everyone loves the community. This is near and dear to everyone's heart, and everyone's heart is breaking while watching this. What are your thoughts as you watch this?
Last night to me was a little bit of a tipping point, and I'll just use my own emotions a little bit. I did something last night that I try never to do. I tweeted angry. I was mad. I was mad at the governor. I was mad at the police. I was mad at the lack of leadership for somebody trying to bring an end to this militarized zone that is being created in North County. I was mad at the tear gas and the snipers. And this is the vision, the picture that is being shown the entire world of St. Louis right now. And it's disgusting, and it's harmful to our Constitution. It's harmful to the future of our community, no matter what happens in the Michael Brown case, no matter what happens when the protests end. It's harmful to future police relations. It has gotten so bad and so out of hand, and I blame the political officials for how they have so badly mishandled it. And so that's what I'm feeling today. I'm feeling a tipping point. Governor Jay Nixon says he's coming to North County today. The entire eyes of the world will be on him. He needs to act. He needs to act decisively, or this is going to continue to get worse.
John Diehl, what are your thoughts as you watch this?
Yeah, I actually share some of Tony's sentiments on this. I was watching it last night, and I guess I've really two thoughts going through my head. Number one, this clearly is not about Michael Brown. This is not about the city of Ferguson. In fact, I think the pictures on the front page of the Post-Dispatch are actually pretty telling. On one side, it's residents of the city of Ferguson cleaning up the mess of what's left behind. The picture on the other side are protesters that are coming in from outside the city of Ferguson. So unfortunately, when you have situations like this, it tends to draw to some respect publicity leeches that come in and try to make it about a bigger agenda and try to throw gasoline on a fire. The city of Ferguson is actually one of the few cities up in that region of North County that is actually functioning and is actually tipping the right way. They do have accredited schools in Ferguson. They have a downtown area that is starting to turn in a good way. It's a split racial city. I think it's about 60 African American, 40% white. But they have a mayor up there that is able to cross boundaries and cross relations up there. That is actually has done a good job in the city up to this point where things are really outside of a city's control at this point. So I agree. I mean, I think it's the leadership in the county, and the governor has to come in today and take control of this situation. He needs to come in and be above. And I think also what's pretty clear here is that there's a textbook way to police, and there's a practical way to police. And I think rather than just looking at textbooks, I think the leadership needs to look out and find other cities that have dealt with these types of situations and get this under control.
But real quick, John, as we pointed out in our editorials, they're not following the textbook. There's a new textbook. The FBI is starting to write the textbook as it relates to dealing with riots, and it's the exact opposite of what they're doing, and that's part of the problem.
Well, and you have to remember, too, the feds are arming these guys. I mean, these guys have more equipment than our military.
Arming the police.
Right. And so, this is federal grants gone wild, and they got the toys and they're using them. And this is what disturbs me is for this community to ever heal, there's going to have to be some sort of relationship between law enforcement and the community. Okay. And right now that is completely impossible. From any objective standard, it is completely impossible. And how can they ever trust these people when they're staring with them with snipers? They've been gassed, rubber bulleted.
Well, hold on a second.
Yeah,
the community hasn't been gassed. The community hasn't been hit with pepper bullets. 100 to 200 protesters have been hit.
You're right, and you're right.
And the same
rabble-rousers.
The same community that is protesting and holding signs that say FTP, that same community called the police and said there are 4 armed gunmen walking down the street. Please,
go get them.
Please protect us and save us.
But the problem is, though,
shot at the police officer.
Right.
Well, and I agree, but I also think that this community idea.
Hold on, John.
This community idea cannot foster here. Okay, they can't. There's and that's why I don't know. I think and I don't know, John, if the legislature would support it, but if the governor declared a state of emergency and had the state take this over so that the locals do not have to look these people in the eye and can have a cooling off period, get the rioting down, stop baiting this. I mean, I think they're playing off of each other. I think there is a lot of interplay between the protesters and the police are taking the bait, and then the protesters are taking the bait, and absent a change in cycle, this is going to keep happening every night. I mean, it's going the same way every night, getting worse.
John Diehl.
Yeah, I mean, number one, let's make it perfectly clear. The wrongdoers here are those that are looting.
Violent.
The wrongdoers are the thugs that are running around in stocking masks with shotguns, terrorizing the residents of Ferguson, and in some respects, you're trying to pick fights with law enforcement. Where's the outrage among the quote-unquote protesters when the lady was shot in the head by a drive-by shooting the other night by a couple of thugs running outside, running the streets? Where's the sense of outrage? Is her life worth less than that of Michael Brown, or is it because who did it? Look, the police are generally the good guys. That's not to say they can't make mistakes in judgment or tactics, but they're the good guys trying to do the right thing here. What's Antonio French doing here? Is his ward in the city the model of good governance and functioning that he thinks he needs to come out here to rabble-rouse to make a point of how things aren't being run right in Ferguson? I think we can go take a look at some of his wards and some of the areas he represents in the city of St. Louis and say, let's fix your problems at home before you start trying to tear down a community that is actually functioning. And then if you're going to come through and riot, why are you tearing down your businesses where you live? That makes no sense. How many residents in that area go and use that quick trip to get food? To get other things because there are no grocery
and this is the thing
stores there.
too.
How does that help that community? It does nothing.
And
that's what wrong is here.
And in the police's defense, I want to say, surprisingly, no one has died. No one has, and I think in their mind, it's sort of that you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall, because the worst has not happened since the looting happened.
First of all, I think this is the police's finest hour. And I'll go out for them to be now. Look, regardless of what happened Saturday to kick all this off, but to stand there for 5 days and to be yelled at and to be told how terrible you are for 5 days, and for them to show the restraint they have, and then
Molotov cocktails thrown.
I agree. And the fact that we see the tear gas, but we don't see. We always see the pushback. We never see the first punch. We always see the second punch. And so we think, oh, my goodness, how terrible it is the police are using tear gas on their own citizens. There are citizens in Ferguson who are cowering because they can't go out. in their streets. African-American families who are cowering in their homes in Ferguson because of these people. So it's not race. There are these police officers are still protecting African-American families who are in their home.
McGraw, I got to disagree, and let me just preface it by saying that my daughter is a cop in another city. She's a SWAT negotiator, so she is not unfamiliar with some of these situations. I've got a son who's a Marine officer. I understand the concept of the military and police and have spent much of my career backing the police. This is not the police's finest hour. I don't blame the police that much. I primarily blame their bosses. They respond to civilian authority, and that civilian authority has failed them with bad leadership and bad direction. But we are seeing the whole thing. Look at the pictures in the Post-Dispatch today. We're seeing the lighting of the Molotov cocktail. We're seeing it on video. And what they are doing in terms of shooting tear gas into backyards, in terms of pushing people off the streets, some of those people are protesters, and they're having their civil rights violated. I understand that some of the people involved out there are rabble-rousing, but I think we continually, and this is the part that we have to grapple with as a community. We always give the police the benefit of the doubt. We know the name of the kid who got shot, who got shot by the cops the other day and has already been arrested and had felony charges against him, and we still don't know the name of the cop who shot Michael Brown, because we always give the police the benefit of the doubt, and we have got to find more balance. That is part of the problem in this situation, and the African-American community is right to be upset about it.
John, I got a break. John Diehl on Skype. Soon to be Speaker of the House. That was Tony Messenger, Jane Dueker. Back in a moment. 9:24. The board meeting in session on KTRS. Tony Messenger here, editorial page editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. House Majority Leader, soon to be Speaker of the House, John Diehl, and Jane Dueker. John, you wanted to jump in on what Tony had to say, and I had to cut you off. Go ahead. Hold on a second. There you go. Go ahead. You're on the air. Wait a minute.
We lost John.
Hold on. I pulled the wrong cord. Hold on.
We had a dime.
All right, John, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
You are.
Yes, we
sound
can.
clear. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Good. I can't hear you as well, but I don't need to do that. So
Wow.
I think the part about blaming the police in the last segment is misguided. Keep in mind the big picture and some of the law enforcement that's been trying to do here. It was very, very clear yesterday, okay, that the city and law enforcement asked peaceful protesters to please be off the street by a certain time, because that's when the thug elements with the guns and everything else tend to come out. And what is law enforcement to do if you happen to have a peaceful protester standing next to somebody who's armed, throwing Molotov cocktails and bricks at the police, trying to keep the order? Are they supposed to say, well, I'm only going to target law enforcement toward that person who threw the Molotov cocktail, and it's not going to hit, or deal with the person who's sitting there peacefully? Look, if someone is there protesting peacefully, and I understand constitutional rights, I understand the fact that they, 2 in the morning, though, at midnight, if there's a peaceful civil disobedience aspect or protest to this, isn't it more effective when people are actually awake and can see it and can follow it? So get off the streets after 11 o'clock at night so the police can get the thugs out of the way, okay? So you can do your peaceful civil disobedient protests during the day.
Why hasn't the city of Ferguson,
peaceful folks?
Why hasn't the city of Ferguson enacted a curfew?
It's the ones that are firing back.
Let me ask you all three this question. And this is sort of Jane's question. And John, I hope you can kind of hear me enough to sort of hear this. And that is, what's to be done? Jane Dueker, is there a curfew? Do you call out the National Guard? Do you bring in more power? If you bring in more power, doesn't that sort of just add more fuel to an already volatile situation? How do we stop this and bring some sanity to it all?
Well, I do think that it is interesting to me that the city of Ferguson has not enacted a curfew. That has happened in cities. And so why don't they reach out to the protesters, sit down and say, look, we got to give you what you need, and you got to give us what I need. And what we need now is a curfew. I mean, There's nothing preventing that from happening. And putting some reasonable regulations that don't prevent the First Amendment, this is done. There are curfews out there, and that has happened. And I've heard even national African-American leaders saying this might be the way to go. And it's not even been explored, which is very interesting to me. So one, I think that takes care of some of what John is saying. And so I think you need better rules of engagement, and we're not getting that. And so I think the police have decided this is their tactics. I don't see a lot of flexibility happening there. I am grateful that they've prevented injuries, but there's
no negotiating with these quote unquote protesters.
No, you don't negotiate with terrorists. That's right.
But because they're
city officials.
There's no leader. There's nobody standing up saying this is what we want. This is what we need.
That's why you elect people.
All the people who have something to say are saying this is not the way to go about doing it. So it's this nameless, faceless amoeba that has no leader.
Right, because nobody is stepping up. I get you. And so I think the city of Ferguson could contribute by doing a curfew. I think that the St. Louis County Board of Police Commissioners could contribute by saying, look, we've got some issues here with the level of militarization, and we need a better explanation, and we need to know that there is no plan B. We have a pattern. Is this going to happen for the rest of the summer, where we're going to have a standoff every night? There has to be a different way, or we're going to continue to have the same result.
Tony.
I think this is what needs to happen, and I tweeted about it last night. I think the first thing the governor has to do when he comes here today is he has to declare a state of emergency. I think the next thing he does, because he will then have the authority to do this, is he calls Mayor Francis Slay and City Police Chief Sam Dotson and asks them if they will take over. If that happens, I guarantee you that the city police will de-escalate. They have more experience dealing with this type of situation and have been trained at a higher level. Then you make a big showing of the county and the Ferguson police leaving the situation, drive those big SWAT trucks out of there, and the city police come in their uniforms, not in their military. They reach across the street. They shake some hands. They start to create a dialogue. I think that has to happen. There's no guarantee that doesn't create some problems, but I think you have to get rid of the militarization, and you have police respond to those situations as they occur. If you get rid of the massive police presence, there's nobody to throw Molotov cocktails at.
I could not disagree more than to have the city of St. Louis come in.
John Diehl, hold on.
Absolutely not. That is the absolute worst possible answer in my belief. If you want to have the state highway patrol come in and take over command or share command, and you want to, try to get a different mix into here and a different, idea, but the idea that we're going to have the city of St. Louis police come over and take over the city of Ferguson is something that I think St. Louis County will not tolerate. And I don't think it moves the ball. I actually think it would hurt relations. And I think people up there are getting frustrated. I think they don't have a choice with the state, but I think the city would actually make relations worse all over the county, and I think it would get worse.
You think bringing in a bunch of white state patrolmen is better than bringing in some black city of St. Louis police officers?
I believe we have to separate the community from law enforcement right now in order to triage.
And that's what my solution would do.
No, it doesn't. The city of St. Louis does not do that. People are angry that the city of St. Louis people are coming in and rabble-rousing in their community. I don't think you have this monolith that, this is a great idea that people are coming in.
Are you saying call in the National Guard?
No.
You're not saying that.
You don't have to do that. I think there is a state command. I think there's gradations of things you can do here. A state of emergency allows the full power of the state to come in, and they can have powers that, and they can cut across all of the, the police board, the county executive, the county council, the governor, the city people, the Ferguson people. The state's the only one that can cut across all of that and do one unified strategy.
John Diehl.
All right. Let's bring some common sense to this discussion. I think what I do, if I'm the governor, I come in and I do agree with Tony. I think the governor should call a state of emergency up and down the corridor. Okay? Number one. Number two, what do you do once that happens? You declare a curfew. Okay?
Which he could do.
A curfew to be enforced by the local law enforcement. Okay, so you get the law-abiding people off the streets with fair warning that if you're following the law, you are off the streets by this time. If not, you're considered a lawbreaker and have to deal with the consequences of it. Okay? Leave that up to the locals in the short term to enforce. If you take somebody off the street because they broke the curfew, keep them off the street. Don't release them again at 9 a.m. the next morning. Okay? Without bail or bond or anything else like that. So keep them off the street. Then you use the resources of the state to come in and help coach up the locals to come in. You do not, under any circumstances, bring in the police department from the city of St. Louis into the county. Now, if you want to advise and consult with them, hey, I'm okay with that if they've got expertise. But you don't bring in ground troops from another jurisdiction
to take over
first,
this community.
But that's what's going on right now.
No, but
have a coordinated response,
right.
Establish a curfew, let the law-abiding citizens know at what point do they no longer become law-abiding citizens, and get the lawbreakers off the streets and keep them off the streets until this cools down.
That's John Diehl. Tony Messenger, John Diehl, soon-to-be Speaker of the House Majority Leader. Tony Messenger is here, editorial page editor of the Post-Dispatch. Jane Dueker here, former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden and a local attorney. Before we go to a break, I have Chief Ballmer was asked the question why he didn't set a curfew. Here was his answer.
I understand that, but our unruly, lawless people are not going to pay attention to a curfew. Our folks that are coming home from work, walking from the bus stop to their house, doing different things like that will be affected by that. And at the end of the day, I'll have to manage a curfew the same way I would have to manage the issues in the corridor up there. So
that's his answer. We're back in a moment. 9:40. John Diehl is joining us via Skype from his office in Jefferson City. He's House Majority Leader, soon to be Speaker of the House. Tony Messenger from the editorial page of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and Jane Dueker, Chief of Staff to Governor Holden and attorney. Jane Dueker, what is going to happen with the actual story of Michael Brown and the evidence that's being gathered and when this is going to come out? What is a red herring? What is serious? What is real? What is fabricated?
Well, I think what Prosecutor McCullough came out and had a press conference, and I think what was I think the most important fact in that press conference is that this is going to go to the grand jury. Okay, there's going to be a grand jury impaneled in St. Louis County of citizens, and what McCullough has pretty clear saying is, I'm going to take every bit of evidence, every person who believes they have something to do with this, witnesses, physical evidence, all of it is going to be presented to the grand jury, every bit of it. And it's not going to be in 2 weeks. He was very clear about that. I think he said he was going to do it as expeditiously as possible. He is trying to get all the witnesses, and I think that is going to take some time. And so, so what's going to happen is it's not going to be McCullough saying yes or no. It's going to be the grand jury saying yes or no. And what he was very clear about is that either way, every bit of evidence is coming out. It's all going to be made public. It's all going to be out there. And, he said if the grand jury doesn't indict, every bit of evidence is coming out right then. If there is a prosecution, then the evidence is going to come out through, a trial and through, that sort of process. And if it's a plea bargain or something happens along those lines, then the evidence will come out. So there is no dispute that all the evidence is going to come out. Okay, so now people obviously are not happy as to the timing of that, and there's going to be all kinds of discussion, but I want at least to have the facts out of what is logistically going to occur.
Is it important to know the officer's name today? Why is that so vital, or is that just something the opposition is hanging their hat on?
Well,
no.
I think this is the deal. The Sunshine Law makes incident reports public, but there is an exception to that isn't discussed, and it was interesting because I watched all the national shows, and they said this is public record no matter what, and that is not accurate. If there is a threat to harm, there is a broad exception for, keeping these things quiet based on, public harm and it's not a heavy leap to say if this guy's name is released that he's in danger. I don't think any reasonable person could say that he's not in danger if his name is released. Now, so that debate, and I think some people are going to go to the courts, and I think that could be very interesting. I think they'll fight for it, but you can't say it's completely illegitimate that they have not given this guy's name out. I don't know what the purpose is of having the guy's name other than they've made a demand and they want it answered. I genuinely don't know why that has to happen right now? And is that productive? I don't know.
John Diehl, we'll get to you in a second. I want to leave time for Tony. Tony, go ahead.
I think you have to separate getting the name out right now from the overall issue. Robert Patrick in the Post-Dispatch today did a story talking to David Klinger, who we also quoted in an editorial a couple of days ago. David Klinger is one of the country's most foremost experts on police shootings. He's a professor at University of Missouri St. Louis. He's a former cop. He's an L.A. cop who did shoot somebody in a situation like this. Klinger advocates for police departments to be significantly more transparent than they are and to put the names of cops out there involved in officer shootings. He has written a report on the city of St. Louis specifically telling the city of St. Louis to be more transparent than it is right now. He's right, because what that does is it brings a more even balance of justice. What we have right now in St. Louis is a situation in which there is such a level of secrecy related to officer-involved instances that there's not fair justice for those people on the other side who are victims, and that's what people are mad about. That's the overall issue, and that culture needs to change. However, as it relates to this specific situation right now, even Klinger in that story today in the Post-Dispatch says, right now you got a situation where this cop's life is in danger, and so you have to take that into consideration. I think that is reasonable, but the overall culture is a problem, and frankly, I'm concerned about Robert McCullough going to a grand jury because it allows him to continue a level of secrecy as compared to him bringing charges and having to file some court records and making that incident report available. I just think that the longer we focus on secrecy, I understand the safety of that police officer, but the longer we focus on this culture of secrecy and always coming up with exceptions, we create a more volatile situation.
John Diehl.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by culture of secrecy. We're talking about a particular case. I think it's clear as can be that under these circumstances, you do not release that police officer's name at this time. Clearly, this gentleman or lady would be in a severe and a serious amount of danger. Okay, there's no doubt about it. Number two, I fear by some of this rhetoric going around, whipping up anti-police and anti, even McCullough sentiment at this point. What happens if just the standard media narrative on this, that Michael Brown was gunned down, is wrong? Okay? I mean, we're assuming at this point that police officer had no justification, no legitimate justification from a law enforcement standpoint to do what happened. There are differing accounts out there that are not getting as widespread media reporting, and the outside publicity leeches coming in are not necessarily telling the whole story. What happens to this community if it turns out that the narrative out there is not correct and the police officer is not charged? Okay? We don't know the facts, and that's what's important to know about this. We don't know the facts. Anybody right now who claims they know in a public forum what happened here is not telling the truth. Nobody knows the facts, and we have to let the system play out. There are plenty of eyes watching this, and I think we need to be appealing for calm when the result comes out, because there's a good chance it comes out a way that a lot of people aren't going to like, and we need to be stressing, I think, at this point, all the different checks and balances which are in place. The locals are looking at it, the county's looking at it, the feds are looking at it, and it's going to a grand jury.
Tony, you understand that there's a certain amount of secrecy that needs to be kept close to the vest because they're
gathering evidence.
And these witnesses don't want to be tainted by what they hear in the media.
I understand that, but I also understand.
Or confirm stories.
But I also understand that if the tables were turned, we would have already had a charge and an incident report. That happens when average, everyday citizens, be they African American or not, are charged all the time. Cops get an extra level of secrecy. They're public employees. There needs to be more transparency. When I talk about, let me tell you what I'm talking. Let me tell you what I'm talking about with the culture of secrecy. Let me tell you what I'm talking about with the culture of secrecy. And this is a really, really minor thing, but it helps tell me the story. We still don't know the details of the St. Louis police officers who in 2006 stole World Series tickets and sold them to their buddies, etc., even though judges have said over and over again, release that information, because the culture of secrecy is such that we think we can even have police ignore judges' orders. This is a problem in this community, and we have to overcome it.
I agree that there is a larger picture.
Hold on. John Diehl, go ahead.
On active criminal investigations, there is a level of secrecy that always takes place. Okay, people, especially when the feds are involved in this. I mean, how many times do we learn the identity of somebody when they're indicted by a grand jury? So someone files a complaint, there's an investigation open, there's an incident. The law enforcement gathers the facts, takes it to a grand jury, and if the person is charged, okay, you know who that is.
John, I have been a reporter for a long time, and I used to cover a lot of crime cases. I've covered murder trials. There is almost always an incident report at the beginning that is public information before somebody is charged. There are almost always search warrants that are public information during the process of the investigation. The level of secrecy when a cop is involved is higher than if Joe Schmo on the street were being charged and investigated with this murder. That's a fact.
That's Tony Messenger.
You just said the word murder, okay? That right there, you've just convicted this police officer.
John Diehl, Tony Messenger,
right,
Jane
some
Dueker. Breaking
moment,
news here. It looks like Bloomberg News had a conversation with Representative William Lacey Clay, telling Bloomberg News that Governor Jay Nixon has confirmed to him that county police will be pulled off of their duties in Ferguson. So according to Bloomberg News, they had a conversation with Lacey Clay. They're saying that Governor Jay Nixon, according to Lacey Clay, has told Jay Nixon that he will be taking the St. Louis County Police from their duties. We do not know who will be taking its place, and we just had a discussion and an argument here, a very volatile local discussion about who should take the place, and we should sort of, with just a moment left, Jane Dueker, you have been advocating, John Diehl has been advocating that the state take that over. What does that mean if the state takes this over?
I mean, I think what it means is they take over command, which is, this isn't bringing in the National Guard necessarily or anything like that, but they take over command, and which means they decide sort of what the tactics are going to be used from an overall standpoint. Now, we already have the state coordinating all the various police departments. All the police departments that have come from the Eastern District of Missouri, they don't just wake up one day and, and say, oh, we're all going to go to Ferguson. There has been state coordination on that, or that would not happen the way it's happening right now. The reason you have Chesterfield Police and U-City and everywhere from everywhere is because these are state things that have already been planned, and the state generally coordinates those, and that's how they were trained, and that's how they all work together in coordination. But I think what we hopefully are seeing is that we will have a different command so that the overall tactics will change.
Right. I want to get John Diehl on this. John Diehl, what are your thoughts as you hear that William Lacey Clay tells Bloomberg that Jay Nixon says that the county police will be taken off the duties?
Well, first of all, this sounds a little bit like over the fence, over the fence, over the fence. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions on a third-hand account on this. As I said earlier, I think the governor should declare a state of emergency, and under that authority, declare a curfew up along the corridor, not just in Ferguson, but from where the pipeline of rabble-rousers are coming in. Then there's a pretty clear corridor where that's happening, and I don't know that I'm an advocate at this point of the state coming and taking over, but certainly, as Jane said, using the command and control authority of the state to help better coordinate local response on getting law-abiding citizens off the street, making the rules clear to law-abiding citizens of when they need to be off, and then clear out the bad elements.
Tony Messenger, you'll have the last comment.
I realize that we disagree on whether or not city police or somebody else should come in. I'm going to advocate strongly not the National Guard. It sends the wrong message, first of all, and secondly, Google National Guard Missouri National Guard and racism. I have some experience writing about this. This is not a good move. Don't bring the National Guard into North St. Louis County.
All right, that is Tony Messenger, editorial page editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. John Diehl via Skype, House Majority Leader, soon to be Speaker of the House in Jefferson City, and Jane Dueker. Thank you all very much for your insight and your expertise. Hopefully cooler heads prevail as we move forward. Martin Kilcoyne next on